For days, China has warned of serious consequences if Canada didn't release a Huawei executive. Well, late today, a Vancouver court granted bail to Meng Wanzhou, but not before Beijing made its move, detaining a former Canadian diplomat, an apparent retaliation. The case has launched a tense diplomatic row among three countries, and there's a lot at stake for Canada, who made the arrest at the request of the Americans, and of course for the two global powers at the center of it all, right now embroiled in trade negotiations so important that Donald Trump even threatened to step in. Canadian Michael Kovrig is caught in the middle of it all now. Kovrig currently works with an NGO in the region, but he has deep ties to Canada's Foreign Service, too. As Katie Simpson tells us, it appears he's become a political pawn.
So let's bring in our panel, Michael Kovrig.
Michael Kovrig knows exactly how China operates. As a former Canadian diplomat, news agencies sought out his expertise. Now the analyst has become the story.
Obviously, we are aware of the situation of the Canadian detained in China. We have been in direct contact with the Chinese diplomats and representatives.
Kovrig was arrested in China, but Ottawa says there's no explicit reason why. This former Canadian ambassador who worked with Kovrig says it is likely retaliation after Canada's arrest of Meng Wanzhou.
In China, there's no coincidence. If they want to send you a message, they will send you a message.
Guy Saint-Jacques says Kovrig received specialized diplomatic training. He was given sensitive assignments and met with Chinese dissidents. In a brutal twist, he also played a vital role in helping Kevin and Julia Garrett after the Canadian couple was unjustly detained by the Chinese.
So he will be subject to lengthy interrogation sessions. Unfortunately, Michael knows this because he was at the embassy when we were dealing with the Garrett case and trying to get them out of China.
We are treating Mr. Kovrig's case really seriously.
The Foreign Affairs Minister is now seeking more information about Kovrig's condition. And until details are clear, Chrystia Freeland has a message for his family.
This has our attention at the very highest levels of our government. We're very, very focused on it. And, know that we are concerned.
The Foreign Affairs Minister has spent the past 2 days emphasizing that Canada can't and won't intervene in the Huawei case. But that message is being undercut tonight in stunning comments by U.S. President Donald Trump, who tells Reuters he would intervene if it would improve U.S.-China trading relations. That is a move that is not going to improve Canada-U.S. relations. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Ottawa.
Now to the side of the story that's playing out here in Canada. Meng Wanzhou was arrested on U.S. charges related to possible violations of trade sanctions against Iran. The U.S. wants her extradited. Tonight, as you can see here, she's out on bail. After spending more than a week in custody in a Vancouver jail, she's now been released. But as Briar Stewart tells us, permission to be released comes at a hefty price.
When the judge announced that Meng Wanzhou had been granted bail, her supporters who had been in court and outside standing around with signs started clapping.
I feel exhausted, and I'm quite satisfied with the Canadian system.
We think she should be released right away, back to China. That's what should do.
But Meng will stay in Canada in a home owned by her husband, and she'll have to abide by an 11 p.m. curfew. In the judge's decision, he referred to her as a well-educated woman without a criminal record. He said she could be released with a number of conditions to prevent her from fleeing. Her husband, a venture capitalist, will put up $7 million in cash. The defense also found others willing to help. Canadian citizens who know Meng, like her former realtor and neighbors. They will put up an additional $3 million in cash and property. The judge says Meng will have to hire a surveillance team to accompany her whenever she leaves her house. She will also have to surrender her passports and wear an electronic monitoring bracelet. In a statement, Huawei says, "We have every confidence that the Canadian and U.S. legal systems will reach a just conclusion in the following proceedings. As we've stressed all along, Huawei complies with all applicable laws and regulations in the countries and regions where we operate." Meng is accused of fraud for deceiving financial institutions, but experts say this extradition case is far from typical.
What's fascinating about this case, of course, is that it revolves around sanctions. Sanctions is a political issue.
Leo Adler is a criminal lawyer who's been watching the case.
What you may ultimately see is a very concerted effort to attack and challenge the basis of the extradition on the grounds that this is a political decision.
And the extradition process could take years, which is why Meng is planning to bring her 10-year-old daughter from China over to Vancouver to live with her. The next time Meng will be back in court will be in February. Briar Stewart, CBC News, Vancouver.
In China, the outcry against Canada has been swift. So let's bring in our Asia correspondent, Sasha Petrusik, with The View from Beijing. So, Sasha, why is the Chinese government seemingly targeting Canada in this?
Well, I think all of this comes down to timing. Rosemary, right now there are some very sensitive trade talks that are going on between China and the United States, and they're aimed at ending this impasse, this trade war that's been going on between the two countries. These talks are very important for China. Beijing very much wants them to succeed, and it doesn't want to do anything that's going to jeopardize that. Attacking the United States, as Beijing has done many times before in newspapers and speeches, that only risks alienating Washington, and China doesn't want to do that. So the second choice is go after Canada.
And give us a sense of how this is all playing out among the Chinese public. Is there any sort of reaction?
It hasn't been a big issue, I have to say. There have been some comments on the Canadian Embassy's Weibo page, which is a bit like Facebook, attacking Canada, criticizing Canada. I'll read you a few. Shame on you, Canada. Canada is a dog without its own brain, says another person. It is nothing but a state of the U.S. So this is the tone that's been there. Much of it is similar to government talking points, though, too. For years now, President Xi Jinping has been making a cornerstone of Chinese nationalism, of his policies, saying that China is rising, but its rise has been slowed down or it's been kept down by the West, and that it has to react against these humiliations that the West imposes on it. So what happens when something like this comes out, this arrest? China feels it has to react for domestic consumption as well as world consumption. Canada gets caught in the middle. Rosie?
The CBC's Asia correspondent, Sasha Petrusik in Beijing, where it's already Wednesday morning. Thanks.
My pleasure.